Y'all ready? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome. November 28th. It is Sunday morning. Y'all, 6:42 a.m. here on the West Coast, Northern California, Stockton, California to be exact, baby. 2 hours and 22 minutes past 4:20 here on the West Coast. Stockton, California. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have not rolled a blunt, made a drink, a cup of coffee, a sandwich, or fired up a square, now's the time to do so. We're about to check the news and see what they got to say. I believe they have something terrible to say that have to do with COVID, so we'll give them a chance to talk. Those of you who have not rolled a blunt, made a drink, a cup of coffee, sandwich, or fired up a square, whatever it is that you do when you do what you do, when you watch TV or when you watch podcasts and YouTube, now's the time to do so. Y'all, it's time for another episode of the Cherry Franklin Show. Make sure you follow and subscribe on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. I might got a cold. I'm about to go get tested for COVID on Monday. Find out some more shit I can't afford right now.
That they're saying may invade vaccines, the scary U.S. default.
Wait.
Some serious news today, guys. In today's fourth stimulus package update and daily news update, the new Omicron variant that they're saying may invade vaccines, the scary U.S. default coming before Christmas, and the latest situation report on the Build Back Better stimulus package. You guys have got to watch this one. Giving you guys all the stimulus news, details, and developments. This is Ron, your number one guy for your daily updates, daily news report, and I just want to thank you guys for tuning in and for always hitting that like button. I really do appreciate it, and I really do appreciate each and every one of you guys. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into this. So hold on to your seats, guys, because we may see the first ever debt default in U.S. history. According to the latest analysis by the Bipartisan Policy Center, the federal government has a 50-50 chance of defaulting on the national debt if lawmakers do not raise or suspend the borrowing limit before they leave the Capitol for Christmas. One of the directors said, quote, "At this point, it's roughly a coin toss whether the X date hits before Congress returns from its December holiday recess. Based on the data we have right now, failing to act before then would be a high-stakes gamble," end quote. The new analysis lines up with what Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has been saying. She told lawmakers that the U.S. would be likely running out of ways to pay for the country's bills on time at that point, which will be after December 15th. And some scary consequences could go down if this isn't dealt with right now. First that's going to go are the Social Security payments and child tax credits. Now, according to Yellen, quote, "Nearly 50 million seniors could stop receiving Social Security checks for a time. Troops could go unpaid. Millions of families who rely on monthly child tax credits could see delays. In a matter of days, millions of Americans could be cash strapped. Add to that veterans benefits and salaries for federal workers. All those could immediately stop if we reach that scary serious X date. And then after that, it's going to be the country's credit rating and investments that are going to take a hit. Just look at what happened in 2011. Congress could not stop bickering over the whole debt limit then too. The whole standoff brought the country very close to a default just before lawmakers struck a deal, but not without a downgrade of the country's credit rating and a significant amount of market volatility. Between July and October of that year, the stock market crashed. The S&P sank more than 18%. Now, if another credit downgrade like that happens, all of the borrowing costs are also going to get higher. Think of credit cards, car loans, and mortgage rates. And since most landlords don't actually own their properties outright, expect rents to go up as well. Like we said, this is a high-stakes gamble. Sadly, it's Congress who's playing, but really, it's the American people who are probably going to pay the price. Let me know if you guys feel what I'm saying here. Drop me a quick comment down below. All right, so just to get into this debt ceiling talk just a little bit, the federal debt is what they use to pay for all the things that Congress authorized. Raising it doesn't allow new spending. It really just lets the Treasury Department pay for what's already been agreed to, not to mention spending on payments such as Social Security, Medicare, military salaries, and tax refunds. Yellen compares it to your credit card limit. Quote, "Raising the debt ceiling doesn't authorize additional spending of taxpayer dollars. Instead, when we raise the debt ceiling, we're effectively agreeing to raise the country's credit card balance in order to pay for all the things that Congress had already approved beforehand. Now, I know we reported on this in October. That was when the Democrats and Republicans were arguing, surprise, surprise, I know, over how to raise the debt ceiling. Democrats wanted to do this a bipartisan way. Republicans said no way, but the Democrats raised it through reconciliation. And if you look in between the lines here, it's more about politics than it is about good governance. If the Democrats win the bipartisan way, they can claim it as a win come midterm elections. Now, if the Republicans win out, they're going to blame Democrats for all the spending come midterm elections. You see what they're doing here, right, guys? Now I'm just hoping that cooler heads will prevail. Senate leaders Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell, they seem to be in agreement. The two were confirmed to have met recently to look for an off-ramp for their looming fight over the debt ceiling. According to Mitch McConnell, we had a good discussion about several different issues that are extant as we move toward the end of the session. He also mentioned we agreed to kind of keep talking, working together to try to get somewhere. Same goes for Schumer. Instead of targeting McConnell and Republicans, he went safe by saying, look, we must pass the debt limit. We cannot let the full faith and security of this, full faith and credit of the country lapse and hope to do it in a bipartisan way. Now, I'm not sure exactly what they meant here, but it sure does beat the weeks of talking past each other and starting the actual negotiations just days before it had to be done in October. So they reached a compromise last time with McConnell elbowing 10 other Republican senators to essentially vote with him for a 2-month extension that was supposed to give Democrats enough time to do this through reconciliation. Well, guess what? Those 2 months are about up already, and Republicans say that they're not going to do this again. McConnell's number 2 Senator John Thune, he said, quote, I don't think that anyone is willing to take that vote again when there's a path forward that doesn't require it. Senator Joe Manchin seems to be all for the reconciliation on this. According to him, if we can't do it and they don't agree on that, Democrats have the responsibility, being the majority party right now, to do this through reconciliation. Oh, and this last one's my favorite. The filibuster carve out that would let Democrats raise the debt ceiling without the steep 60 vote requirement in the Senate. President Biden hinted at this recently.
They need to
I
raise
think
the
we're going to
vote
see an awful lot of Democrats
before they could go on vacation. I mean, raise the debt
now, this
ceiling
is what the Republicans
in the
are most
vote
worried about, because once Democrats get a taste of those
before their Christmas
it's going to be hard to
vacation.
stop them from doing
Meanwhile, we're
scams
still
other
waiting
things
to
like
see what are the
sales.
benefits from
Progressive
the
Caucus
previous
Chair Kamala Paul already has a list
packages
drawn
they
up. Now,
passed.
to add to that, some recurring stimulus checks that 80-plus lawmakers, including Vice President Kamala Harris, all want to vote for. Then you have some pretty rosy stimulus prospects on the horizon. Let's keep an eye on our future updates. And speaking of things to keep an eye on, there's this new virus variant called the Omicron variant that's causing concern among health experts. The World Health Organization held an emergency meeting last week to identify Omicron as a, quote, variant of concern, meaning the Omicron variant is especially virulent, transmissible, or able to defeat public health measures, possibly including a resistance to the vaccines that we have. Here's a lowdown from White House expert Dr. Fauci.
Well, certainly there is a new variant that is now in South Africa in the Gauteng province that has some mutations that are raising some concern, particularly with regard to possibly transmissibility increase and possibly evasion of immune response. We don't know that for sure right now. This is really something that's in motion, and we just arranged right now a discussion between our scientists and the South African scientists a little bit later in the morning to really get the facts, because you're hearing a lot of things back and forth. We want to find out scientist to scientist exactly what is going on. But it's something that has emerged in South Africa and seems to be spreading in a reasonably rapid rate, in the sense of when they do test positivity, they're seeing that it's a bit more widespread in South Africa than was originally felt a couple of days ago. So it's in a fluid motion. We're finding more about it, and literally it's something that in real time we're learning more and more about.
Is it possible it's already in the U.S.?
You know, of course, anything is possible. We don't know that. There's no indication that it is right now. It seemed to have been restricted.
Now, aside from what he said,
that originated in South Africa and that went to Botswana, and people who traveled and found out they were infected, and one that had gone actually to Hong Kong. So there's a lot of travel. You never know exactly where it are, and that's the reason why we're getting together to them to try and get the precise molecular makeup of it so you could actually test for it. And that's something that'll take a little bit to put the appropriate materials together to do that. But we are in very active communication with our South African colleague scientists.
So explain to us the questions and the concerns about how this might evade immunity, because there are so many mutations here on the spike protein, which is what the vaccines that we have are designed to hit. The question is now going to be, right, is that spike protein still permeable when it comes to the vaccine?
Yeah, that's what we're going to be finding out, because when you look at a mutation, it can give you a hint or a prediction that it might evade the immune response. What you need to do is you need to get that particular sequence of the virus, put it in a form in the lab where you can actually test the different antibodies. So you can have a prediction that it might evade, or you can actually prove it. Right now, we're getting the material together with our South African colleagues to get a situation where you could actually directly test it. So right now, you're talking about sort of like a red flag that this might be an issue, but we don't know. Once you test it, you'll know for sure whether or not it does or does not evade the antibodies that we make, for example, against the virus through a vaccine, or following convalescent after you get infected. When you get antibodies, do those antibodies protect you against this new virus? The answer is we don't know right now, but we're going to find out for sure.
Some other facts that I managed to look up. Omicron has a high number of mutations. So that means that the variant is spreading at a reasonably rapid rate. Now, it's not sure whether or not the current vaccines will be effective against the new variant. Many scientists seem confident that they will, since this was the case for other variants like Delta. There's just this one concern about the spike proteins in Omicron. Fauci said that the mutations in the spike protein, quote, are raising some concerns, particularly with regard to possibly transmissibility increase and possibly invasion of immune response. The UK Health Security Agency has also recognized the potential for the mutation in the spike protein to make the variant more transmissible. They're still looking into this, so let's just stay tuned for more updates, guys. Hopefully, helping out with all of this is Biden's Build Back Better bill. It's making its way through the Senate, and a lot of people are saying a lot of things. Just see here.
We are going to see a plan come out of the Senate and then be sent back over to the House and on to the president. And the reason I have that confidence is that, roughly 90% or so of the bill was pre-negotiated with the Senate. And I think those things that are on the edge and still need to be worked out can, and there may be some things that fall off. I happen to believe in family and medical leave. I think it's important for Americans, but I recognize that might be a sticking point. But overall, I think that there's been a lot of pre-negotiation, and that signals that we're going to have a bill that's going to come out of the Senate and back over to the House.
Lonnie, if that's the case, what do you think it really looks like? If you were a betting person, not what you want, what you think it will be.
Yeah. Well, I do think we're going to see some paring back. I think the recent estimates from the Congressional Budget Office, which show that this bill increases the deficit by almost $800 billion over 10 years, I think that's going to be a very, very difficult pill to swallow for the likes of Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema. So I do think there will be some changes. I think you're going to see some paring back of some of the elements of this, maybe an enhancement of some of the revenue side, because politically it's very, very difficult for these moderate Democrats to vote for a bill that increases the deficit. It is not paid for, contrary to the claims that are made by many House Democrats, made by the Biden administration. It's not. And so they're going to have to figure out what they do with this, because the politics of this going into an election year are very, very tricky. With inflation continuing to be an issue, are we really going to be pumping $1.7 trillion of new spending into an economy that I don't think, frankly, can afford it right now?
Now, I don't know about that new spending argument, but what we have looked up time and time again is that most of this is definitely going to be paid for, or at least this is what we're being told. There's even some talk that this could actually lower the national deficit quite a bit. Still, there are some pitfalls that we have to watch out for. I'm counting 3 to be exact. So first, the chances for the Republican amendments. After debating the legislation for up to 20 hours, senators can introduce limitless numbers of amendments and force votes with little debate. The so-called vote-a-rama can drag through the night. This is where Republicans can strike. They can force changes that weaken the bill just by winning over just one Democrat. And they can offer amendments that lose but gain ammunition for the next year's midterm elections by putting Democrats on record against popular-sounding ideas. It's a 2,100-page bill. There's definitely a lot of room for some of that Congress warfare. Then there's also the reconciliation rules that have to follow. Yeah, the reconciliation process lets Democrats bypass the Republican vote, but it also has some pretty strict rules on its own, together with a very strict rule monitor in the form of the Senate parliamentarian Elizabeth Mistah. Now, if it's going to be done via reconciliation, it has to have something to do with the government budget. That's why some people are calling this the spending bill. As the Senate parliamentarian, McDonough has the last say on what passes reconciliation. Now, with that being said, what's in danger right now is immigration. The House bill would let millions of migrants in the U.S. since before 2011 without permanent resident status get permits to live and work in the U.S. for up to 10 years. McDonough has recently said that two previous Democratic immigration proposals violated Senate rules. And last but certainly not least, there's the Manchin factor. He's already had a hand in dropping free community college, new dental and vision Medicare benefits, as well as carbon tax. Now he has his eyes on removing those 4 weeks of paid leave. He recently doubled down on his position against paid leave by saying, "I've been very clear where I stand on that. I just think it's the wrong place to put it because it's a social expansion." He's also been going on about inflation. All this seems to indicate that the Build Back Better price tag is headed downward. Still, we do have our stimulus hopes up here. Yeah, we've got Manchin chomping at the bit to downsize this major stimulus package, but hey, they're still talking, right? Manchin hasn't said he wants to blow this whole thing up. He even had months of talks with party leaders. Eyes on the Senate, guys. We'll see debate coming in a few days. Through it all, there's still a very strong chance that we can see this stimulus happen. Childcare, healthcare coverage, education, housing, not to mention making a serious dent on that major global warming. Best of all, it's all mainly going to be paid for with the higher taxes on the rich and big companies, or at least so they say. That's the stimulus dream, guys. I hope you'll stay with me to see how these dreams actually become a reality. Join the fam, hit the subscribe button now. I hope you caught all of the information in our fourth stimulus package update and daily news update, the new Omicron variant that could invade vaccines, the new U.S. default that's coming before Christmas, and the latest situation report on the Build Back Better stimulus package. Don't forget to share this stimulus info with your friends and your loved ones. Just hit the share button right there. More exciting updates in the next week, guys. Take care and be safe.
Thank you, Ryan Yates, for that update. Y'all, we waiting on a bunch of votes. The government figuring out exactly how they're going to tax corporations and tax American businesses to pay for the economic plans. They just approved 1.25 trillion dollars for the infrastructure bill, as well as 1.75 for the Build Back Better Act. All of these things have to do with health care, in-home care, universal broadband, pollution and green energy, things like that. As well as taxes, y'all. They're going to be taxing a lot of people. Any type of funding that we were looking forward to, there's no clear specifications except for extensions on the child tax care credit, which is something obviously needed as children need to be social distance learning. Parents may or may not be able to go to work during the day, things like that. So that money and educational funding is and should be available, y'all, in every city, every community, as well as eviction protection plans. There was rumor that in early November and late October, unpaid rent and low-income housing rent programs that were covered by the government did get some eviction protection funding, that rent paid and things like that. But y'all, the government's number one goal is to get everyone vaccinated and everyone working and employed so that the major corporations can afford to pay 27% and 28% in taxes, almost 30 and 33%, 1/3 of total income profit that is made in those corporations. Now, that doesn't do a lot for us, but that does a lot for the wealthy, those who are expected to get close to 80% of that income, only getting about 65-70%. So, last but not least, any questions, comments, concerns about the stimulus check? We were expecting SSI recipients to receive some type of stimulus funding. We were expecting adult workers tax credits, maybe monthly payments, or a one-time stimulus check. But again, none of that has been specified or clarified in these stimulus packages or by any governments. I know states are doing state programs where if you file your income tax return and get an income tax refund from the state, making less than 35 and 40,000, 75,000 and 90,000 per couple, y'all could be able to qualify for a state stimulus check, okay? And maybe a second round now that the stimulus funding has been passed again. It's really an amazing thing if there is funding being passed for local and state governments that these governments take this funding and put it into an economic program for the community and the state. So yeah, please do what you can. We say all that to say this. Visit change.org to sign petitions for the causes you believe in. The forced stimulus check for $2,000, monthly payments, the justice for the say their names hashtags, justice for Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Vanessa Gillen, Elijah McClain, Ma'Khia Bryant, Adam Toledo, and many, many more under the George Floyd Justice Act of 2020. As well as vote.org to register to vote on legalizing businesses, the amounts of business licenses, what types of businesses are legal in your city and county. Yeah, also community programs, public housing, homeless shelters, free healthcare clinics, public transportation, educational funding, social distance learning, social distance, pandemic, mandatory measures and laws. Y'all can vote on things like that. Politicians running for office, as well as bills and propositions being written into law. Y'all make sure you do what you can, where you can, when you can. If you are able to vote, please do so. And once again, follow us and subscribe on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at Cherry Franklin Show 2021. Our 2022 profiles will be ready by the end of the year, so y'all stay tuned. A lot of great things and great videos coming as soon as we get this visual editing stuff out of the way. I really, really